Yes, good morning. Welcome to our workshop today. Our workshop series, hosted by Charles Sines, CEO of Anti-Fragility Health. The workshop series is on longevity. We've been running this since the beginning of the year, and thank you once again for joining our workshop. And I hope you're going to enjoy. Please send your comments, like us, love us, hate us, so we can do better and continue to provide you information that supports your longevity journey. Again, what is longevity? It is a combination of practices that support health span, which is how long you're healthy, and lifespan, which is how long you live. Health span is constrained in the American culture or globally, because in the US, the health span, the lifespan is around 78 years, but the health span is around 40 years. So the last 38 years of life, most people are sick and take multiple medications. So we want to extend both. And how do we expand lifespan? There are lots of emerging technologies around anti-aging that slow down the clock, stop the clock, or even reverse the clock. And as we proceed with these workshops, we're going to explore all of that. So we're going to talk longevity, is about health span and lifespan. And we know that there are three fundamental drivers for longevity, three fundamental things. The first one is mindset, what we call the healthy deviant. There's actually a book that just came out around that. The people being healthy today is revolutionary. You're going against the counterculture. You're going against the culture. The culture, if we look at the statistics today, is that 1 out of 4 people, 25%, are going to get a stroke. Only 3 out of 1,000 are healthy in America as they turn 50. Only 3 out of 1,000 are healthy. So we live in a dysfunctional, unhealthy environment. So having the right mindset, or what we call a healthy deviant, is really critical for this journey to longevity. The two other drivers is lifestyle. Your genetics is your genetics. And we've spoken a lot about the whole drivers of lifestyle. And that's not part of the workshop today. But that's something you can see in some of the history, some of our videos. If you check on YouTube, on Facebook, you will see at Anti-Fragility Health Clinic, you will see the repository of our videos that explore a lot of these topics. Finally, we have the issue of signals, right? As God gave us this body, He also gave us some signals. And we are more interested in signals of imbalance. And what's imbalance is the movement away from homeostasis. Homeostasis presents to us the relative equilibrium for the body to be healthy. Please leave the door open. Thank you. Homeostasis is driven in a way that allows the body to always achieve equilibrium. And so equilibrium is the end state that we want to achieve in actually capturing this sense of longevity. So let's look at the 10 signals, the imbalances, and explore the ones that we're going to work on today. So there are 10 areas where we look at signals, and these signal areas allow us to address the underlying imbalances in the overall biochemistry as we address longevity and health span. So we have talked about cardiometabolic signals. Why do I put it number one? It's the number one killer in America. Immune signals, we talk about it all the time. Most people are vulnerable, get sick. Musculoskeletal and pain. Pain is a very important signal that tells us there's underlying issues. Stress signals, where people feel tired, overwhelmed. GI signals, We're used to that because we have to pee and poo every day. And most times we're either in the state of constipation or dysentery. Being in the arena of having good metabolic output as a number two is a very challenging issue. And we'll talk about that today in maintaining. You know, we're exploring GI today and the GI imbalances. So it's really important that as a signal, your urine quality and your poo quality are very important signals to the microbiome, which is where we're going today. The sixth area is energy. As we all grow older, we know what happens to energy. You feel tired all the time. And that's a signal that something is wrong. Feeling tired all the time is not a good thing. It's a signal of imbalances. Circulation, we know microcirculation, tingling, numbing, they're all big signs of imbalance. Cognition, ability, that one is my big challenge now, as I always forget my keys. I can't remember where the keys are. And when I keep them in specific places, then I can't find them in that specific place, you know, deeply irritating. But, you know, being able to process information and have memory, both short and long term, is a challenging signal. And those are the early signals that begin to indicate, you know, oncoming illnesses like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and the others. Our hormones, big signals. One of the biggest hormone interventions we do downstairs is the thyroid hormone, which is the master conductor of metabolism, which is why most people cannot manage and control their weight. And it's because of the deep underlying issues of hypothyroidism that really plagues our culture. But that is just thyroid. There are other hormones, especially the sex hormones, that need to be in balance for us to function. Hormones are the conductors of the overall system. And therefore, having your hormones at the right levels is really important, even for your awareness and sanity. A lot of people go crazy because of deep hormonal challenges. And finally, the big topic that we intervene a lot downstairs, toxicity. We do a lot of chelation, and we provide phosphatidylcholine as a coating, a bilipid coating, because of the accumulation of heavy metals and plaque in the arterial architecture. So issues of toxicity and how heavy metals also lead to the deposit of fat is a big signal for those of us who carry a lot of fat around our waist area. And therefore, as you detox using chelation and other methods, the body begins to just naturally shed that fat and let it go, because the body was holding onto the fat as a way to store the heavy metals. Because if heavy metals are circulating in the system, they're very destructive. So the body has this mechanism of capturing them and locking them up. So it's very important that we understand that. That's a signal. So let's step into the space of what this conversation is going to be about today, which is about our GI imbalances. And specifically, right, in the last couple of weeks we've been talking about GI. But specifically today we want to look at the bacterial diversity, specifically what is called the microbiota or the microbiome. And it is a description of the overall surface of the body. Each of us have a very, very fingerprint of a microbiome. That's the bacteria, fungus, and all of those things that follow us, both inside and outside. Mostly in the gut and outside in our body. And therefore, it's very important that we understand that microbiome. That's why some people have body odor, right? They step into a room and you can smell them. You're actually smelling their microbiome. Whether it's good smell or bad smell. Sorry, I'm not talking about perfume-infused people. I'm talking about natural body odor that you can detect as human beings, especially when we sweat. So very important that we understand. And when we talk about the microbiome in this conversation today, we're going to start. I'm not going to talk about the body because I'm sure you all wash your hands and take a bath in the shower at least twice a day. We're going to start in the mouth. Then we'll look at the whole stomach, colon, intestines, and then areas, number 1 for urine and number 2 for stool. That gives us a comprehensive internal look at the microbiome. And what is the responsibility of the microbiome? It's really important that we understand that. We all have it. It's critical. First of all, is protection. That mucous, the laminar area, protects the internal organism of the body from invasion. Bacteria, fungi, in biofilm architectures, viruses, that's its initial job, protection. And so it's important that we understand the job of the microbiome, and therefore imbalances in the microbiome, it's like our border wall. If it's porous, then bad things will come in. Its second job is structural. Why do we say structural? Last week we were talking about absorption and elimination, right? At the cellular wall, across from what we call the gut lining, is a one thin cell that allows absorption and elimination. And all of that is an ionic exchange that supports the body to absorb everything that it needs and to eliminate the things that have to be extracted, either pee or poo. So very, very important. The job of the microbiome is to really manage that structure and manage the transfer of things across that structural boundary. And finally, it does 2 other things, metabolic and signaling. Let's take metabolic first. It is really important because what it's doing, it's helping with the breakdown, assisting the enzymes in the breakdown of our complex macronutrients. And on the signaling, as we all know, nutrient signaling to the cells, it's a critical issue in metabolism. The cells need to know that sodium has arrived. They need to know that potassium has arrived. They need to know that magnesium has arrived. And based on that signaling, they then say, over here is our strongest need for magnesium. And that is how the body then carries, right? It's like our road system. The bloodstream then says, magnesium is critical right now in the brain. That's where we're taking all the magnesium that's been absorbed from food and the nutrients we've taken. So signaling is and the underlying metabolism are critical components of the microbiome. Really, this issue of signaling, nutrient signaling, oxygen signaling are critical aspects, and there were Nobel Prize wins in the last couple of years around this issue, how the body senses oxygen and nutrients and therefore manages its demand and supply of those critical nutrients. So let's look at how the microbiome actually develops over a lifetime. It's really important because our interventions are driven by our understanding of that. So let's look at infants to teenage. Their microbiome is rapidly changing. And one of the real issues why, it's because of gestation, breast milk, vaccination, and the mode of birth, whether it was through vaginal birth or cesarean. So it brings with it a really challenging issue with regard to the initial structuring of the microbiome in terms of its diversity and composition and the support and maintenance of that. And so we know that these things, including medications that we give children, actually drive the long-term structuring of the microbiome. And so for young children, it's really important that we watch their pee and poo and really get a sense of how their microbiome overall is performing. And then as we become adults, a couple of bad things happen, even though our microbiome gets really stable. And the bad things that happen is, number one, our level of hygiene. It's not just hygiene about washing your hands and cleaning your body, it's hygiene about the food. The restaurants, as we've all outsourced eating these days, we don't cook at home anymore, everybody's eating at restaurants. How can we judge the quality and hygiene of those restaurants? But that is the life we live today. And so it's challenging to our microbiome because we jump from restaurant to restaurant. The food may be the same, but we're exposing ourselves to different levels of bacteria. And that's a challenge. We have issues of inflammation, which comes from infection and other things. Issues of sleep. Most of us are not sleeping well. Issues of unbalanced hormones. Stress, big one. Diets, and GI disorders. And one of the things that was really interesting, we're going to talk about later, as I was reading this, it was really interesting, was that most of us eat the same food every day. We have not brought variability into our diet. And I keep thinking about my grandmother in the village. The variety was amazing. Plus, it was also seasonal. And as I moved to the West, I just eat the same thing all the time. And I hadn't noticed until today when I was reading that. It's very interesting. You develop this bad habit of eating only the things you like. And that's not what nutrition is about. Nutrition is about giving the body what it needs. So it's a very interesting thing that we've developed this desire to eat only certain foods. And we don't change those foods and we eat it all year round. And that gives us a very bad microbiome. So it's a very, very important thing that I'm trying to communicate here. And that's why supplementation, we're going to talk about it, becomes so critical. Because if we're not providing the seasonality and the diversity in the diet, then supplementation needs to support that to give us that benefit that comes from having a healthy microbiome, which are protection. Vaccinations are not going to solve that problem. God gave us a microbiome to allow us to build that protective architecture against bacteria and viruses. The structural architecture, which typically leads to leaky gut and things, and we know how dangerous that is, because then toxins, viruses, and pathogens penetrate and go across the blood-brain barrier. And the metabolic and the signaling, right? You can eat all you want to eat. If there's no microbiome to do the signaling, then the cells don't know that. Very critical immune components like vitamin D, zinc, selenium have arrived. So the body flushes out because nobody wanted it. It's like those ships lining up in Long Beach waiting, right? Because nobody wants to work anymore because they're all getting benefits, right? So all your microbiome is at home receiving benefits. They're not unloading the nutrients that are arriving to deliver to the critical cells that require it. Sorry, I'm using examples like that so we can get to the fundamentals of this issue, right? It's really important. So then we become old, and I said above 40, and I'm being particular about that because most of you now who are my friends in the 60s, you keep saying you're young. Well, unfortunately, age is capturing with us. And the big issue of senescence. What is senescence? Cells that are dying but are not getting flushed out. So they crowd the architecture. It's a critical contribution to aging. It overwhelms the cells because we have all these glycated end products that are choking the space inside the cells. And so they just get tired, they're weak. And that's why we detoxify, we put antioxidants to try and give the energy to the cell to remove this. That's why we fast, so we can enjoy the benefits of autophagy and mitophagy. So really important, because that is really what's causing that vulnerability and That's why most of us above 60 have to be careful with Mr. COVID, right? It loves us because we are vulnerable. Why are we vulnerable? The protection is down, the structural integrity is down, and the metabolic and the signaling issues are down in the microbiome. Therefore, as you grow older, it is important that you fix these things. And that's what we're going to talk about with regard to our interventions. So really important that you get this stuff about bacterial diversity providing real power in the microbiome. So let's look at genetics, right? We all have inherited good or bad things from our parents. Yeah, that's a given. But you need to know where you're starting from. You know, some of us come into life and we just can't deal with most of the food around, right? A lot of people have celiac and all other digestive issues. They have aches, they have acid, because a lot of people have low acid, hydrochloric acid, and therefore, you know, the hydrochloric acid is critical in the stomach for breaking down complex and killing a lot of bacteria from the mouth that's not supposed to go through, right? And it's a challenge because some of these nutrients or the probiotics we're going to talk about have to go through that hydrochloric acid, right? So they can stay in the stomach, I mean in the intestines, where their job really becomes critical. So we'll talk about some of that. But genetics, it's a critical issue, and we need to understand the susceptibilities or the weaknesses in our underlying genetics that we inherited with regard to our microbiome. So if your parents are eating this same diet, you know, you take some people on a date and I always get the chicken. They always eat chicken. They don't eat anything else. There's no seasonality. They have compromised microbiomes because that's critical in supporting that. Second, there's an increasing amount of children being born with C-section. And that is a problem because as the child comes out, they are inheriting the microbiome of the vaginal tract, which is really critical in populating the initial gut architecture. So when they do a cesarean, the child misses that opportunity for actually absorbing that vaginal microbiome, which is critical in the early days of health. And therefore, a lot of those children initially have a lot of digestive issues in the early stages of life. And today we do fecal implants to try and support and correct some of those imbalances. And then let's jump to probiotics. I was alluding to probiotics earlier in terms of how does it cross that hydrochloric challenge in the stomach so it can get to where it needs to go. So we have a diversity of probiotics. We have them as spores, we have them as synergy, and what are synergy? It's delayed and released as it travels down. So they've built things that will bypass the destructive nature of the hydrochloric acid in the gastric so they can actually support the duodenum, the colon, the small intestines, and the large intestines in the jobs that they need to do and provide that required diversity. So it's important that when you look at probiotics and their diversity, it is important that you don't go again and just choose one probiotic. You need to have a diversity of probiotics that you take so that the body begins to look for what it needs and then resupply. It's like your supply lines is just one supply line. What did they teach us in the military? You cut the supply line. You take people out. So if you are so dependent just on one probiotic architecture, the bad bacteria learns that you are always bringing this, will look for ways to suppress it because it's a fight to win. Really important that you create the diversity so they never really know which ones you're bringing on today. right? And that diversity brings in the surprise that's required. So we have lots of probiotics here, even for children. Infant probiotic with human milk oligosaccharides. We know how important that is. We have them 350 billion. We have in 100 billion, 225 billion. These are numbers, CFUs, that if you go on Amazon, one of the top selling probiotics has 20 billion CFUs and it sells for 21 bucks. And I know it's best-selling probiotic on Amazon. So most of you are buying that. But for 20 bucks, you're not getting value for money, if that is your intention. So it's really important that you understand the diversity and the quality that is required. And you should look at how do we extract these bacterial strains to provide you the quality? You know, a lot of people like cheap shit. If you buy cheap probiotics, you're getting crap. That's the way life works. It's very expensive to extract these bacterial spores, keep them agile and alive in the right manufacturing environment so they can be operational when taken into the gut. When we live in a culture where most people like cheap things, because I'm sure because they think their lives is cheap, so they go and buy cheap probiotics, cheap omega-3s, cheap. And all those cheap chain things are sitting on the high sea now. That's why Walmart is suffering. Cheap shit. We love it. And we can't wait for it. Right? We have supplements here. Made in America. Right? Not outsourced to China. Right? Made in America. That's what you want. Good quality. Made here. In what they call the USA. That's what we need. Right? Prebiotics. Fiber. Most people don't understand. Oh, I always make a smoothie. God didn't create fruits to be smoothies. He made the fruit. If he wanted it to be liquid, he would have made it liquid. The fiber architecture in the fruit is critical for health. So if you turn all your fruit into smoothies, you're destroying the fiber architecture that the body actually needs. I'm not saying don't do any smoothies, but please. Or you come and buy my fiber. Or you eat your fruit properly and your vegetables. If everything is a smoothie, then where are you going to get your fiber? Right? So fiber, why is fiber critical? Number one, it supports peristalsis, which is this involuntary, subconscious flow driven by gravity of food and water through the gut architecture. It's not like we're here, we drink water, okay, now go to the stomach, now go to my intestines, right? It flows. It's called peristalsis, that whole movement that drives that. And the fiber slows that movement down. Why is the slowing important? Because it allows the body full time to extract the nutrients that we have taken. Some people eat and they go to the bathroom. You know, it's like a tunnel, right? You need to eat, and the body needs to say what is coming. We need to do metabolic signaling. Oh, some vitamin K just arrived. We need to extract it and send it to Charles's amazing brain, right? Fiber is critical for that process. And it's interesting that those phytonutrients, God put those amazing nutrients in fiber. It's really smart. Make you eat that fiber so that those micronutrients will take their time going so that we can absorb them completely. Very expensive. That's why phytonutrients are expensive. Look at that. Paleo greens, phytonutrient greens, proprietary brand. It's 64 bucks. But do you know something? It contains more vegetables than you can ever find. It has organic spinach, organic carrot, organic beet, organic kale, organic tomato, organic parsley, organic broccoli, organic cauliflower, organic kale. It has fruit blend, apple, blueberry, cranberry, raspberry. It also has spirulina, barley, wheatgrass, chlorella, and nettle leaf, plus the other things. Couple of spoons. I take that every night with my probiotics. Because how can I eat 5 greens a day? Not possible when you live in California, land of no vegetables, right? Where are you going to find the vegetables? They all disappeared, right? So that's the challenge we all have. Prebiotics are really critical in maintaining a healthy microbiome. The things that we love, Americans, medications and antibiotics. I went to the doctor and they gave me antibiotics. Leads to constipation. And it destroys the microbiome. And then when people come here, oh, I don't know what's going on. Well, when did you last finish your course? Right? Because most women, men have UTI, which is also an imbalanced microbiome. And what does our traditional doctors prescribe? Antibiotics. And then the UTI keeps coming back, keeps coming back. I don't know what is going on. The microbiome is destroyed. So the UTI doesn't go away. Those are big signals of disrepair, where we have not achieved the right. So medications and antibiotics are very destructive. And therefore, we need to be very careful which medications we're taking and the counterbalancing measures. As we know, statins destroy mitochondria. So taking your statins plus antioxidants, glutathione, is critical. It destroys mitochondria. And the heart has the largest number of mitochondria, plus the lungs and those organs, right? Then we come to nutrition, right? We spoke about the variability and seasonality already of our diets. I know it's challenging for most of us to really change our diets because we love what we love and we buy all the cheap food. You know, the sad thing coming to America that I'm still struggling with after 20 years is why Americans love cheap things. Food cheap, clothes cheap, everything cheap, supplements cheap. Then what's the point of having a big house when everything else is cheap? Or renovating your stupid kitchen that you don't use to cook. Why? Have all these big stupid homes, but you buy all cheap shit. You go to England, they have small homes, and they buy quality, value, different culture, different mindset, right? Big cars, big house, cheap shit, cheap health. Geography, I was just talking about that. That's why most Americans are sick. 3 out of 1,000 are healthy. Read the new book from the woman who's been writing Experience Life magazine, The Healthy Deviant. And she talks about those numbers and why it needs a revolution for you to be healthy in America today. Because most Americans are sick, and they love being sick, and they love their doctors. Love us, like us, and I hope you enjoyed this today. Join us next week on Saturday. Thank you. Hello, my friends.